All right, good morning and welcome to the third virtual listening session that I'm hosting with parents of current Central students. For those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Catherine or Kate Davis, and I am the very proud new president of Central High School. We've hosted a number of sessions so far in August. I've had the opportunity to meet many families of 285 rising freshmen because we wrapped up our freshman orientations this week. If your student was involved in the Bridge program, not this week, but the previous week, I also had the opportunity to meet many parents during that week-long event as well. But if I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, welcome. And I am very grateful for you all being here. If you haven't done so already, if you could use the chat to either put your name, your child's name, either publicly or send it to me directly. That's the way that we keep track of who attends these meetings. And any question that you have throughout this presentation, feel free to drop it in the chat. Our assistant principals are logged on with us and they are helping me to monitor any discussion or question that comes up in the chat. So let's get started. I'd like to just begin with an overview. We're going to begin briefly by introducing members of the Central faculty and school district faculty who are logged on with us this morning. I'm going to share a little bit about me. I know folks maybe you've read about me in the newspaper, or I've worked at a school where your child has attended previously. I've found that I have a lot of connections in the Central community already, but if not, I'm going to just take this opportunity to share a little bit about who I am. And then also some important things just to be on your radar coming up at Central. You all submitted a lot of questions. If you RSVP'd in the last 12 hours or since last night, I didn't have the opportunity to include your questions necessarily in this presentation, but we do have your email addresses and are able to follow up. And if you did not have a chance to submit your question or a thought, something that's on your mind, we absolutely can use the chat feature during this presentation to have a discussion around such topics. I sent out some guiding questions to parents who I met with last week. I actually don't think I sent them in my email yesterday, but you'll see them on upcoming slides. And I'm hoping that we can use those questions just to have a conversation and start the year off in a really strong place. Okay, this is a little bit out of order, but just a quick couple calendar points before we get into the meat of this meeting. Well, as I said, we wrapped up our freshman orientation yesterday, August the 18th. We had hundreds and hundreds of students and families coming into the school building, receiving information from our school-based team, as well as from Central's Home and School. It was a really informative and wonderful event. And thank you if you were able to attend. Our students' rosters have gone live on Infinite Campus. Students can view them on their student portal. And as a parent, if you are logged into the parent portal, you are also able to see this information. If you have any questions about rosters or that's a student's schedule, the classes that they are scheduled to take this year, we absolutely can answer any questions about that area. Teachers are coming back in a couple days. Tuesday, August the 23rd is the first day that our entire faculty is returning to the school building. Many parents have tried to reach out to some teachers or said, oh, I haven't heard back from so-and-so. That's because they've been on vacation, but their official day back when they will be checking their emails and responding to everyone is next week beginning on Tuesday. I hope this is no surprise to anybody, but the first day for students is Monday, August the 29th. And then just the last two quick dates. We have a back to school night scheduled for September 21st. Please save the date on your calendar. And last but not least, the add drop period for students. That's when they can make changes to their schedule, their roster if needed, is happening the second week of September. We do have other members. While this is a president's listening session, virtual meet and greet, we have other members of our school-based team logged on, and I just wanted to take a moment to introduce them to you all if you don't know them yet. APs, as I introduce you, please come off mute and say hi to everybody. The first assistant principal I would like to introduce is Miss Harrington. Hold on. There she is. Terry, are you logged on?
I am. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many people here on this listening session, and I am super excited that this is going to be a great year with our kiddos coming back in the building.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. I'm going to explain this in an upcoming slide, but each assistant principal is overseeing a particular grade level of the school this year. We have 4 assistant principals and obviously 4 grade levels. So Ms. Harrington is going to be overseeing our senior class 282. In addition, she supervises the English department as well as the world language department. The next assistant principal I'd like to introduce to our virtual meeting is Dr. Scott.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We are excited about this school year. I've never been this excited about a school year in quite some time. So that is a fantastic thing. I am here for you. If you need any questions or anything like that answered, please don't hesitate to email me. I get back to people pretty quickly. So good luck and stay in touch with your kids all year. Just because they're in high school doesn't mean they don't need you to be on them about their work. So have a great year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott is overseeing our social studies and arts department, as well as our 10th graders, 284. Our next assistant principal is a returning staff member, but she is new to the administrative role. I'd like to say good morning to Ms. Snyder.
Good morning, everyone. It is lovely to be here today and see so many faces on this Zoom. I'm thrilled to shift roles. Still obviously doing the roster piece. Just in looking at the chat, I've probably answered emails from 50% of your students. I recognize many of the last names in the past 48 hours. So I've made over 400 roster changes in the past 48 hours, and I will continue to do so even before school starts. My goal is to best support everyone that I can. So if you have any questions about that, I'm also happy to answer those or stay on after the meeting to address roster concerns. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Snyder. Ms. Snyder is overseeing our 11th grade class 283. She's been the IB coordinator for many years, and she's overseeing the science department this year. And last but not least, I am very excited to introduce a new member to our assistant principal team. If you are a returning parent, you might have been familiar with Ms. Gillis. She was an assistant principal at Central last year. Ms. Gillis has moved on to be in a different role at another high school in Philadelphia. She's no longer an assistant principal. She's in a principal residency role. So we celebrated her transition and we welcomed Mr. Brooks to Central High School. Mr. Brooks, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, families of Central. I'm glad to be here with you all today. Really excited, just echoing the rest of my team for everything that's going to be happening this year. Any way I can support you, I would love to do that. My door is always open, and so is my email. So looking forward to communicating with you all. Welcome to today.
Thank you. And Mr. Brooks is overseeing our incoming 9th graders, 285. In addition to the math department and our phys ed and sports. Another really cool fact about Mr. Brooks is he's also a member of our alumni community. He's a proud member of the 262nd graduating class at Central. So thanks, Mr. Brooks, for joining us. And then before I continue, I just want to also introduce Ted Dahmers, the assistant superintendent who's logged on with us this morning. Sorry to put you on the spot, Ted, but good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Echoing, it's nice to see a couple familiar faces. I don't know as many as the Central team, but I do know some of you and worked with some of you in the past. Really excited to support Kate's transition and work with the full administrative team. So I'm here to listen and learn like all of you, and I appreciate the opportunity and the space to do this and your commitment and support for Central High School. If I can be a support in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out as well.
Thank you, Ted. Good morning. And I know that we also have a couple Central teachers who are also parents logged on right now. I won't call them out by name, but if they want to chime in at any point or join in with any institutional knowledge, you are more than invited to do so. Okay, so let's dive in. First of all, in the last week, I've hosted a session very similar to this one with, I invited all of the students in the sophomore, the junior, and the senior class. So some of your kids might have logged on with me. Of course, they were optional, but I shared the same slide with them as well. It's been really interesting to compare and contrast the way that your students are responding to my slide to the way that parents are. This is just some surface level information. It can always feel a little bit uncomfortable to create a slide about yourself. But my hope is that across the school year, I can get to know you all and we can interact and interface a little bit more naturally. But here's just a little bit of background information about me and what I was doing before I came into this role. So first of all, I am entering my 5th year as a principal in the school district of Philadelphia. That's a picture of me when I was a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed first-year principal. I was the principal at Charles W. Henry School, which is a K-8 elementary in Northwest Philadelphia in Mount Airy. It's actually been wonderful. There's a lot of Henry families whose kids come to Central. I saw some of them in the past week, and it's just been really, really wonderful to be able to continue the journey with them. Before I became a school leader, I was an assistant principal for 3 years. I did 1 year as an assistant principal in Philadelphia in an elementary school in North Philly. And before that, I was an assistant principal in Brooklyn, New York. All of my professional teaching career happened in the New York City school system, the New York City Department of Ed. I started out teaching in the Bronx, and then for a number of years, I was a teacher on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in a dual language elementary school. I didn't teach in French, but the school offered elementary classes in French, Spanish, and English, which was pretty unique for a public school system. If you didn't know about it already, I am a graduate of the School District of Philadelphia and a very proud member of the 264th graduating class at Central. That's a picture of me up on the screen. I'm on the left-hand side. I think it was my sophomore or junior year. And the woman standing in the middle, her name is Deborah Cooperstein. She was a department chair at Central for many, many years. When I was a kid at Central, one of my favorite things to do, one of my passions, was the visual arts. So Ms. Cooperstein was the art teacher, and I believe we were on a trip to a museum in that photo. That photo used to hang in my office when I was a new administrator because one of my classmates he's a teacher in the school district, and he was one of my classmates in this class. So it's pretty special to me. It's been really wonderful to come back to Central. There are many things that still look and feel the same from when I was there, 20 something years ago. Of course, there's a lot of things that are different as well, but my memories are absolutely fond and very, very special. I am born and raised in Philadelphia. I grew up in the Northwest area of the city. It's where my family still resides. So being able to be a leader in the school district of Philadelphia is just really personal and meaningful to me. And last but not least, people have always asked me very frequently, Ms. Davis, are you a mom? Do you have kids who are in the school district? No, I am not a parent. I always joke that, at my last school, I had 500 children. At Central, I had more than 2,000, but I do have a dog. Your students have started a campaign to have her be the new mascot of Central High School. I don't think that's going to go over very well, but this is my dog, Lola. She is a Labrador Pit Bull mix. So I know there's always dog lovers logged on as well. And then last but not least, outside of being a school leader, I absolutely have some hobbies that I try to spend some time doing in order to create some balance in my life. I love to read. I've been a reader for pleasure my entire life, as well as a little bit of an athlete. Nothing too incredible, but I definitely have a couple half marathons under my belt. I like to run. I live in the Northwest area of the city. So if you are somebody who visits the Wissahickon, you might see me there. And I really do like to ride my bike. I've been into spinning lately, which is my current hobby. So that's just a little bit of surface level stuff around me, but I found in sharing this that, especially with the students, we've realized that we have connections and things that we both enjoy to do outside of work. So that's been fun. All right, so moving on. Thank you to all families who took the opportunity to submit feedback on the RSVP form. As I've been onboarding over the past couple months, this is a process that I started in late April, early May. I've really asked stakeholders the same 3 questions. I've asked folks to share information with me about what's been going really well, what are things about Central that are points of pride and have really been supportive to you if you belong to the faculty stakeholder group as a member of our staff. I've asked these questions to students as well as to families. Additionally, I've asked folks if they're willing to share information about, what's not going so well. Where are there opportunities where we feel like we can grow, improve, and provide additional support? That feedback has been incredibly, incredibly helpful. My team and I have been working very diligently during the month of August and have used this feedback as we've examined the systems that exist at Central High School. You all submitted a lot of feedback, and I've used some of it and I've bucketed it into themes that I would like to share now. Of course, if the thought that is on your mind, you don't see it represented on this slide, please feel free to drop any comments, questions in the chat, and we can always add on. So let's begin. Here on the slide, you can see these are some frequently asked questions that have come from the parent and guardian community. Absolutely, it's important to acknowledge that depending on the grade level of your child, they either were at Central during the pandemic while schools were closed, or they came to Central having had those years in middle school and were reacclimating themselves to what does it feel like and what is it like to be in school 5 days a week, full time again, no longer learning on the screen. We know that students return to school with significant academic needs, as well as social, emotional, mental health needs as well. While before I was at Central, a lot was done to support students, we also know that it wasn't enough. We need to do more, right? Specifically, families whose kids are embarking on the college application process, thinking about taking their SATs, getting ready for that, there's a need for additional support. So the one thing that I wanted to take a minute or two to highlight this morning are some ways that we've supplemented our school's counseling department. I am really excited to be able to share, if you're not already aware, that we've expanded the number of counselors that we have at Central. So this year we have 6 full-time School District of Philadelphia school counselors at Central. For the past couple years, we've had 5. So while it is only a small increase, it allows us to lower the student to counselor ratio that we know is so important. Additionally, with the support of Assistant Superintendent Dahmers, we've introduced the Stepping Stones program to Central. Ted, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know much more about this program than I. Can you share for maybe 30 seconds an overview of what Stepping Stone is?
Sure. Stepping Stones is a community-based nonprofit, and the way they support a number of Learning Network 1 schools is through we call community college access and equity coordinators, CAE. So college access and equity coordinators, and they serve a couple different roles in schools. So they support college access initiatives, especially for our 9th and 10th graders, recognizing that the counselors are really focusing on the 11th and 12th graders. And it all comes through an equity lens. They'll lead training with staff and just support equity initiatives throughout the school, and recognizing that college access, especially in a school like Central, is very much an initiative connected to furthering our equity goals as a district and as a network, and Stepping Stones can play a really critical role in that. For sign up, one of the great things about Stepping Stones is they jump in and they make themselves very visible in the school pretty quickly. So there will be flyers up, there will be signs, there will be ways to connect. So I would just say sit tight for a couple weeks. But if you're not hearing something by early September, then check with one of the administrators and we can make sure to get you connected. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. And I will say that the individual coming from Stepping Stones is going to be a full-time staff member in our school. They'll be there 5 days a week, and they're going to have an office as well. So we're going to make sure in the first couple of weeks, kids are going to have a number of assemblies that is bit by bit rolling this information out to them. And we'll make sure to facilitate that introduction with all of our students. I did it on my first 2 sessions when I shared this information about Stepping Stone. I had a number of families who were familiar with the program and were really excited to hear about this partnership. So it's something that we are really looking forward to this year. Additionally, thinking about students' needs, we also know that coming back to school this year, our staff have significant needs as well. It is no secret that last year was one of the most difficult years for educators, not only in the city of Philadelphia, but nationwide, right? Teacher burnout absolutely was at an all-time high across the city. We saw more resignations and people making the decision that this career was just not right for them. I will say that we had a significant amount of turnover at Central. We are welcoming almost 25 new teachers to our faculty. They are not brand new teachers. They're teachers coming with experience in different backgrounds for a number of different reasons. We have some staff members who are taking a sabbatical year. So we have teachers who are going to be with us for a 1-year interim period. We had some teachers who chose to teach in other districts. And we also had actually just increase. We had some new positions that we didn't have before. But we definitely know that being able to support our teachers is crucial to their success and your students' success at Central High School. one thing that the administrative team and I have worked a lot around this summer is thinking exactly around that, right? How, as administrators, what are we doing to make sure that we are present in students' classrooms every single day, right? Authentically engaged in conversations with our teachers, real conversations about what's working, not what's not working, and where are there opportunities for additional support to sort of lighten the load and relieve some of the stress that exists at school. Of course, teaching is, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult jobs that exists anywhere, right? And it is something that is really, really respected. So just know that I am a leader who loved teaching when I was a teacher. It is something, quite honestly, our faculty doesn't know this, but I am always in classrooms, jumping in, and that is how I make sure that I stay connected to this work that happens in our classrooms. So please know that this is an area that we are aware of. We know that it's very important. And if your child at any point throughout the year has a challenging experience with a faculty member, it's something that's on the assistant principals and mine's radar, which is part of the reason why we've changed our supervision structure a little bit more. So of course, on our website, you'll be able to find the information about which assistant principal oversees that area. And we hope that we're just adding a little bit more transparency and clarity to who to contact if you or your child needs additional support. And last but not least, this question down here, I included it, even though I was not the leader at the end of the year last year. I think it's a really important thing to highlight as we are launching the beginning of a new school year. One thing that it absolutely, I think, summarizes the work we've done this summer, and my assistant principals can chime in if they'd like to, is we've taken this opportunity to really examine the systems that exist at Central High School, right? It might seem like a small thing, but things about like a minute by minute breakdown of what happens when kids walk through those front doors, right? What happens as they go to their lockers, into their advisory periods, or during their lunch periods. What we've done as a team over the past couple weeks is really tightened up these systems and thought about ways that we can transparently share these expectations across our staff, with the primary purpose of keeping students safe and having things run in a little bit more of an orderly fashion at Central High School. I think an example and a question that I got frequently in the last sessions I've held would be around our policies for our open campus. If you're not familiar, we have a lot of furniture that was purchased graciously by the Home and School Association that has allowed students to eat outside during their lunch periods. But one thing that's really important is making sure that while we have an open campus, our building is also secure and safe so that it's not left open for anybody who would be a stranger to our school community to come in. That's something we're trying to figure out, where's the middle ground, or what do we need to put in place in order to still make sure that kids have access to fresh air and green space during the school day, while also maintaining a campus that is secure and safe for all. In that box on the left hand, what I just described is really our systems-driven approaches that we've taken a lot of time to comb through this summer. Additionally, at Central High School, if you're not aware, we have a pretty elaborate teacher leadership structure. Each of our departments is led by a teacher leader, a department chair, or what we call a school-based teacher leader. And these leaders amongst our faculty are absolutely crucial in identifying areas where we need to improve and sharing information with the assistant principal teams and myself. We have one of our teacher leaders logged on with us right now because she's also a parent. Hi, Lisa. Don't want to just shout you out, but I wanted to say hello. Yes, Ms. Snyder is putting some of the teacher leaders into the chat, and their information is also found on our school website. And then last but not least, this question at the bottom, and there's more information about this on an upcoming slide. This is one of the most frequently received pieces of feedback I've gotten since I've come into the role. Overall, a need for access and increased communication from the school. So what does that mean? That means the experience that people have when they call our main office. That means when they reach out to a teacher because they might have a question about a child's grade or something on their report card, the ways that this communication is happening. On an upcoming slide, you're going to see more information about this. But when I think about transparency and proactive communication, not only am I thinking about the communication that comes from me as the president or my assistant principal team, I'm also thinking about the ways that we communicate with students, the ways that we communicate with faculty, the ways that our faculty are communicating with students, and the avenues and spaces we create for students to communicate with all of those entities. It really does need to flow in every single one of those ways. And what my team and I have done this summer is calendared and created opportunities, intentional opportunities to make sure that this is a priority throughout the school year. I'm going to talk about safety on my next slide. Okay, so if I were to boil everything down into 3 areas of focus for the upcoming school year, these have been the themes that we've centered all of our work on this summer. So first of all, as I said on the last slides, clear communication. Our school website still remains as a really important tool to find out updates, and we have a Google Calendar that is linked. Additionally, we're going to be introducing other structures into our school environment this year that make sure that we're sharing information with students in a way that is more transparent and clear, and also giving a little bit more leeway. So I know that last year there were a number of school-based events that that students might have not had an awareness of. For example, we have showcases at the end of the year, or we have different celebrations, honor ceremonies. And some of these were quite honestly a little bit last minute last year, and kids missed out on opportunities. So those are just examples of things that we're prioritizing. Another example of this is that we already have most of our academic and assessment calendar mapped out for the entire year. So when your students return next week, they're going to begin to learn information about when are midterms happening, what is that schedule looking like? When are finals going to be happening at the end of the year? What does that schedule look like? When are all of those potentially stress-inducing assessments taking place, and what's the schedule looking like? Historically, that information has not always been rolled out in the beginning of the year, but that is stuff that we've already figured out for this upcoming school year. As I talked about on the last slide, we know it's absolutely an area of focus to prioritize students' well-being and safety. And when I say the word safety, I do mean obviously physical safety, the experiences that kids have when they are coming to school in the morning, going home in the afternoon, whether it's right when the bell rings at 3:04, or if they're staying for sports or clubs and leaving the school building a little bit later. In addition to that, I also mean emotional and mental safety, right? The ways that our counseling department is meeting the needs of students in a variety of different areas. We know that our school counselors are integral in providing information about college and career services, but also they need to and have to be available if kids are struggling with mental health needs or just personal needs on a day-to-day basis. Historically, in the past, our counselors unfortunately have been tied up or not always available, but the team and I have worked to rewrite some of this, and we are really hoping that there's a different experience with our school counselors this year. The last thing that I want to share about physical safety before I move on to the last area of focus is just sharing a little bit of information about work that I've done with our Home and School Association, or HSA, this summer. So, and if I have any members of the HSA team who logged on with me, you can feel free to chime in. But I am very excited to share that we've been engaged in, I want to say, 3 separate conversations with some of the chiefs in the School District of Philadelphia, discussing specifically issues relating to physical safety and transportation that were experienced by the Central community last year. So we're talking about students who have been assaulted while coming to and from school, issues that have taken place on buses or subways, and just generally this concern of my child is not safe while they are traveling on public transportation or in the neighborhood. What I am glad and hopefully optimistic to share is that I do truly believe the School District of Philadelphia is taking these concerns very seriously. Yesterday, I was on a Zoom meeting with 2 members of our HSA, as well as the Chief of Safety for the School District of Philadelphia, Kevin Bethel. And I had the opportunity to meet the Chief of the SEPTA Police Department, who was newly hired. He was in the conversation yesterday, as well as, oh, thank you, Stephanie. I'm so glad to see that you're on, as well as the commanding officer from the 35th Police District, which is the local area that's where Central and Girls High are. The four of us, we were all putting our heads together and thinking about ways that we can share information with our students and families, introduce our students and families to the officers who are patrolling and protecting our neighborhood. And I was very glad to learn yesterday that it is the same officers every single day. And the purpose of that is to have continuity so students can recognize familiar faces at the Broad and Olney terminal. Or as they're walking from school, there's an officer who is always on right out on Ogons and who that person is. It is something that I do believe that each of those entities is taking very seriously. And those are shifts and improvements from last year. So please stay tuned. That's just a little bit of information, but there will be much more coming out. We're thinking about ways to introduce different programs and speakers to our students. I see a question in the chat from Colleen asking, will safety be addressed for the time students leave clubs and sports? Yes, Stephanie, I believe we were talking about from the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. It might have even been later, but yes, we were absolutely talking about just later than the 3:04 dismissal time. And Stephanie, if I left anything out, you can feel free to chime in.
I think you covered it well, but if there's any questions that come up that I can help with, happy to do so.
Thank you. And then last but not least, my team and I have really been thinking about how are we prioritizing the conditions that we know support strong instruction at Central High School? Something that I shared very transparently with the other groups listening sessions that I've had is that while I am biased, I believe we are the best school, not only in Philadelphia, but across the United States. That does not mean that we don't have work to do in this area and the ways that we support instruction happening at our school. The assistant principals and I have been very intentional and specific about the ways that we're going to be supporting the different 7 departments at Central High School to make sure that a student's experience in different classes is positive from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Team, did I leave anything out? Is there anything that you'd like to highlight? Looks good. Okay, awesome. So moving on, this was a question that I put out to the Central community, and I've gotten some wonderful, wonderful answers. I am interested, as I am continuing, and we are continuing to prepare for the beginning of the school year, I'm always interested to hear and learn more about what you appreciate about Central, specifically from the lens of being a parent or guardian, right? What is really working for you or working for your child? What would you like to see more of? You are welcome and invited to leave any ideas in the chat or send it to me directly. And or if you feel brave enough, you are more than invited to come off of mute and join in the conversation. Things that came up from previous parent meetings, if anybody would like to echo or it might inspire you to share. Parents talked about the diversity of courses available in our course catalog and how that's really been a highlight for their students at Central. As well as trying to think what other folks shared. Absolutely our sports teams. And I think those were the most important things that people shared. I'm going to exercise about 30 seconds of Zoom wait time. And if anybody would like to chime in, this is your opportunity. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing about the arts program. Rachel, I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting your daughter at one of these virtual sessions. Yeah, Keith, absolutely. Our student body and our diversity, students from across the city. I'm actually going to use Keith's comment just to elaborate on one thing. Another frequently asked question that I've gotten since we've started is folks are really interested to know more about if the student body and specifically the racial diversity of our incoming 9th grade class, is it really different than what we've seen historically at Central? I can tell you just anecdotally, the answer to that is a resounding yes. As we sat in the auditorium for each of our freshman orientation sessions, I was very, very encouraged by just obviously the racial diversity of students that we saw sitting in the seats. Once the school year begins and these numbers are public, I'm going to be sharing some percentages around our demographic information. And, it is just a real pride point for us at Central. I see families sharing that they appreciate the opportunities for kids to get involved, clubs, sports, arts, absolutely amazing teachers teaching at the college level, opportunities to explore in a friendly environment. Yes, thank you. The one thing that I would like to add on before we go on to the next slide is that I also had the opportunity to read, I would call it like an exit survey, our graduating senior class 2A1. They each filled out a 10-question survey where they gave feedback around what really worked for them. And if they were going to do anything differently over their past 4 years, what would they do? The number one piece of feedback that students gave, and maybe you can use this to encourage your own children, was that they wish that they had gotten involved in more things, specifically during their sophomore or junior year. They wish that they tried out a sports team, or even if it's JV or a club team, or they wish that they got involved in a cultural club or just a hobby. And so I would just encourage parents to tell your students, this is a new school year and we're feeling really optimistic. It's a great time to try something new. Thank you to those families who are sending me direct messages as well. All right, so on the other side, we are very interested in learning more about opportunities to improve. So your kids have given me lots and lots of feedback about, you know what, Ms. Davis, this worked really well for me, or this did not work for me whatsoever, and I felt unsupported in this area. Our team is taking this feedback incredibly seriously this year. It is a goal of ours, along with our focused area of communication, to increase opportunities for folks to genuinely tell us what is working and what's not working. And believe me, it is not taken personally, it is used constructively. So if anything is on your mind now as a parent, you're thinking about maybe something that I haven't touched on in the past 40 minutes and you'd like to bring it up, absolutely, I invite you into the dialogue. I have a parent who sent me a direct message sharing about the challenges of communication, feeling like their child needs more support. And I just wanted to bring that to the surface and say, I hear you, and it is a priority for us this year. Yeah, Chelsea's sharing around, grading and making sure that the parents are receiving responses when they reach out. Yes. Yes, that is on our radar. Thank you for bringing that to the surface. One other thing that I did not mention on a previous slide, which in my opinion answers this question, and I think it was on my second area of focus, is we've been thinking a lot about ways as a school we strategically support students who are having academic challenges, right? Your kids find themselves at Central because they've experienced a lot of success and academic success in their elementary or middle school years, but that does not mean that when they get to Central, everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? We know that students have challenges and there is a need at our school to continue and improve the way we support students who are struggling academically before we see a challenging grade on an interim report or a report card. And I think that gets at one of the comments that was dropped in the chat around grading. That's absolutely a priority of our team. And that's actually part of the reason why each of the assistant principals is overseeing a specific grade level so that we can just have a closer eye on how kids are doing academically across our courses. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat. Dana shared breaking down the size of the school to have different learning communities where students are in cohort classes together. That's interesting. And I will say historically, some of that has happened at Central before. There was some of that when I and Mr. Brooks were students at Central. Yeah, I'm getting some great questions from parents, direct messages around COVID protocols or the challenges that occurred last year when their child was home with COVID and having a really difficult experience transitioning back into the school. One parent highlighted in another direct message, and I will share this information publicly as well. I have a YouTube channel that I used at my previous school that I'm bringing over to Central, and it is a place where I like to share recorded sessions. That's why this session is recorded now, and that has been helpful, but they're realizing that their kid is missing out on a lot of opportunities, and they want increased access. Yeah, I'm going to take another opportunity. Thank you, Colleen, for dropping a question in the chat about advisory time. Colleen's question says, will Blair be an open advisory time when students can get extra tutoring or make up work? Yes, I'm going to take about 60 seconds to explain this. So if you're not familiar with what advisory is the first non-academic period of the day when the day begins at 8 o'clock. It is 53 minutes. Advisory runs from 8 o'clock to 8:53. Each student has an advisor. Oops, that's the school bell. It's going to ring in 3 more minutes. Each student has an advisor. And historically, for the past couple years, advisory has been an open time. So what that means is students are expected to check in with their advisor, get marked present for the day, and then they are allowed and permitted to travel throughout the building. And it is a time when students are encouraged to use it like a study hall period. They can meet with teachers for additional tutoring. They can work with classmates on homework or group projects, and where they can just get themselves ready for the day. What we will say is that for some students, that's been a really successful period. And for other students, it's been a little bit of a missed opportunity. We have made some changes to our advisory this year that I'm hoping sets kids up for even more success. The first change that we've made, and it might seem very small, but we're hoping that it has a large impact, is that we've restructured the way that kids are rostered into advisory periods. So historically at Central, when Mr. Brooks and I were kids, it was arranged alphabetically. So I was an advisory with individuals who had last names beginning with D or C in the alphabet. And then for my 4 years at Central, I transitioned with those students in the same advisory period. That allowed for continuity and deeper relationships, 4-year relationships with some of my classmates, many of whom I'm still connected to today, 20 plus years later. In the past couple of years, we've gotten away from that at Central. And one thing that we found, and this has been reaffirmed through feedback, is this has, it hasn't helped us to build community. Kids have not always necessarily felt connected to their advisors. The advisor hasn't been a tool and a resource for them because they don't spend as much time with them. And they're not forming these deeper relationships with the students because it's been changing. It's been more of a random assortment. We are reintroducing advisory as what I'm calling a hybrid model this year. We are school-wide starting out with a closed advisory period, and that's because we're resetting our norms for some of the work that can be done during advisory. And then as we transition into the month of October, there will be certain days per the week when it is open and certain days of the week when it is closed. So it still allows for opportunities for kids to seek additional tutoring, to work with each other in a study hall capacity, and also just to collaborate with the 30 or so other students who are rostered into their advisory. Our hope is that it has a positive impact on our school community. Wanda, I think your question refers to advisory. Do they start with the class? They follow that class until they graduate. It's for the most part, yes. The only time we would see differences is if students left the Central community and we had changes to who was rostered to each advisory.
President Davis, Wanda was referring to assistant principal.
Oh, okay.
No worries. She was just referring to assistant principals, and AP Snyder let her know that that's something that we're still in conversation about.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's the first year that we're reintroducing that, so I don't think we've determined that yet this year. I will say that we have an analogous structure for our class sponsors. So if you're not familiar with what a class sponsor is, that is a teacher's position. They have a reduced teaching load. They teach less classes per day. And then they have some teacher leadership responsibilities assigned with the class. So Mr. Burns, our theater teacher, is the sponsor of our freshman class. Ms. Thornton, who was a biology teacher, but now she is our diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator, does our sophomore class. Mr. Horowitz, who is a social studies history teacher, does junior class, and Ms. Zesserman does senior class. Mr. Burns has been the freshman sponsor year after year because we find that the events that he plans for freshmen and the communication that he needs to provide is similar. But when we've done both, sometimes the sponsors stay with the class and they follow them until they graduate, and other times they just stay specifically with 9th grade or 10th grade. I think there's positives and negatives for each. I got a direct message from a parent just servicing the concerns that they have about the vaping culture and drug use that has existed historically at Central. And they're acknowledging that this is an issue for all high schools, but specifically an issue at Central. And they're wondering if other parents have noticed this. I just wanted to surface that. Thank you to the parent who sent me that direct message. It's absolutely a point of concern. And it is something that is visible at Central pretty publicly. You know, we have students who vape outside of the building during morning admission process. And I will say, unfortunately, this is an issue that I've tackled on the middle school level as well. We do see students younger and younger and younger experimenting with vaping. What I've done historically at other schools that I've led is that we've partnered with other community-based organizations to think about how do we share information. I want to say proactively, but sometimes it's also reactively with students so that they're really informed on the dangers of vaping, right? The addictive nature of vaping, and making sure that we're getting them the resources that they need. I can tell you that our counseling department has already put their heads together around this, and we have assemblies and information sessions set up with organizations to share information with our students this year connected to this issue. I just received a private message asking around just a clarification around advisory. Is it a goal for students to remain with the same group of students in upcoming years or the same advisor? Yeah, I want to say yes, and I'm going to put an asterisk behind it. It's also, there are some exceptions to this. We have some specific advisories that are not organized by last name. For example, if your student is involved in the yearbook and they're a member of the leadership team who does the yearbook, they have a separate advisory. We also have a couple other programs within Central who have a separate advisory that is not organized by last name for a number of different reasons. For now, yes, that is our goal, but I'd say that there are some transitions that happen year after year. When I was a student at Central, I had one advisor for 2 years, and then I had another advisor for my junior and senior year. I don't think I missed too many questions in the chat, but if I did, feel free to either send it directly to me or any member of my administrative team. We are coming to the end of the time allotted for this virtual session, but this last question really just is a catch-all for everything. I would love to just have a couple minutes. If you have a question that's on your mind, something you're thinking about before we welcome your students back in 10 days exactly on August 29th. I am actually going to stop sharing my screen, and anybody who would like to chime in is invited to do so. Yeah, Lynn, thank you for that question in the chat. Lynn asked, will the breakdown of counselors change with the addition of the 6th counselor? Ms. Snyder, I know that you are the assistant principal overseeing the counselors. Would you mind sharing a little bit of information around this?
Sure. There will be some minor changes. For the most part, everyone's stuck with the same section of the alphabet, but the cutoff shifted up just because basically each counselor lost about 85 students. So before they were over 500 students, now they're about 415, 420. So if your child is someone who shifted counselors or received the new counselor, whose name is Ms. Stern, who is, we've had glowing, remarks about her from everyone that she's ever worked with, then they may have a different counselor. And if they had really built a very strong relationship with their counselor, and they were shifted, that's something that we could talk about. In very few cases, we have had students stick with a previous counselor where a relationship was formed.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. And how can families know which counselor is assigned to their student?
I can actually share, President Davis, if you want me to just post the breakdown in the chat, or I could share my screen, either way.
Yes, and will it be on the school website?
Yes.
Yeah, please post it on in the chat. That'd be wonderful. I also see a wonderful question or comment in the chat from Christy saying that my child heard that late starts on Wednesdays is no longer happening. Is that true? Yes, Christy, I'm so glad that you asked that question. That is true. And that's something that I'm going to need to communicate. I didn't realize that that wasn't shared at the end of last year because the decision was made before I came into this role. So students for the past couple years have started at 9 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock. And the reason for that is because from 8 to 9, the faculty met in department meetings. Across the school district of Philadelphia, they have eliminated that practice. There is no longer a 1 hour late start at any school district of Philadelphia high school. So the kids will be starting at 8 o'clock a.m. 5 days per week. Yes, that is true. And I am now realizing that that was not shared with families. So we'll make sure that that difference is communicated before the first week of school. Hi, Ms. Fleming. I see your question. I also saw you virtually raised a hand. So if you'd like to come off mute, you're more than invited. Ms. Fleming left a comment in the chat around cell phone usage. Yes, you're asking around policies put in place school-wide. Your child is addicted to his phone. That is a frequently made comment by a parent, and you're just concerned about the lack of focus. I'm so glad that you brought this point up. The answer to your question is yes. We are what I'm coining as a reintroduction of a number of policies that exist at Central. They're not policies that I have created this year, but they're policies that haven't necessarily been enforced over the past couple of years, especially as students returned from school closure. Cell phone usage is one of them. So an overview of cell phones, and any of my assistant principals, please chime in. Cell phones are absolutely permitted at Central. We know that they're integral for student safety coming to and from school. My parents bought me my very first cell phone when I was a 9th grader, and I took the 18 bus home every day. That said, they can also be they can negatively impact the learning environment, especially if kids have the habit of leaving it on the desk, touching it during paying attention to the screen rather than paying attention to their teachers. What our rules are at Central is that students are allowed and permitted to use their phone to make phone calls or text while they are in the main corridor of our school building. When they go into the department corridors, which are the 3 prongs of the E, and absolutely when they're in their classrooms, they're expected to put the phones away. We have some teachers who reinforce those rules 100% of the time consistently, and we have other teachers who shy away from it more. We are relaunching this school year with a strong implementation of this policy because we know that we just need kids to really be focused on learning. That said, some teachers do choose to use their phones as an extension of a learning activity. That is still permitted and encouraged in certain spaces at Central. And in those circumstances, it would be okay to use a phone.
I would also like to add that to Wanda's point that her son is addicted to the use. Given the fact that, we're moving through this generation, we have a youth who grew up using their cell phones, and it's up to them to manage how they use it. So because they have the freedom to use it, Central does prepare you to be independent. And a part of that independence is like learning your own boundaries and setting a boundary for yourself when you're going to be using the cell phone, how you're going to be using it is a learning curve. And that's something that we as an administration team and also teachers can support not only Wanda's student, but all of your students on managing when they should use their phones so they could be self-aware, so they don't have to be in a situation where they're in a combative situation with the teachers, where the teacher has to take away their cell phone.
Thanks, Mr. Brooks. And then the last thing before we close this out, 2 more points. Thinking along the lines of reintroducing policies, one policy that we are relaunching with our students is the idea of our dress code at Central. So I just want to be clear in sharing that Central has always had a dress code. We have a dress code, not a uniform. That was in place when we were students at Central, and historically it has been a practice, and it is actually required per school district Board of Education policy that schools have a uniform or dress code. We are reintroducing our dress code at Central to make sure that kids are coming to school ready to learn. We have seen some versions of school clothes that quite honestly are not conducive to learning. They sometimes are not safe, to be honest. And I do believe, just personally, that what a child wears to school every day in terms of self-expression is really important. I don't ever want to have a uniform at Central. Nobody should ever look exactly the same as someone else. But that said, kids do need to come to school ready to learn. We have air conditioning in every single classroom at Central. That has been an improvement that was made over the past 4 years. So it is important that kids come in layers because some spaces are warmer and some spaces are cooler. I think that our dress code, in my opinion, is incredibly appropriate and inclusive. We definitely do not have specific differences for different genders of students. It is the same for everyone. But some frequently asked questions about our dress code that I just want to share with families as well. Can kids wear shorts to school? That was one of the questions. Yes, they can. Absolutely. They can wear shorts, they can wear pants, they can wear skirts, skirts of any material, jeans, khakis, whatever floats your boat is okay. The thing is that shorts just can't be too short. They need to be appropriately short. I said to the students, nobody at Central is ever going to hold a ruler next to your clothes, nor would I ever want to have a school environment where that would be the culture. We're not ever looking to police what kids wear, but undergarments should always be covered. That's an expectation at school. Additionally, with tops, kids can wear any color, any pattern. It just can't contain any sort of offensive or obscene messaging on it. They can wear long sleeves, short sleeves, sleeveless, absolutely. Our guideline for this year is that tops cannot have cutouts on them. So it is not appropriate to wear a completely backless top to school, or it's not appropriate to wear a top that is completely open on the sides at school. It's just not conducive to our learning environment. And quite honestly, in many of our classes, it's not safe. In science classes, we have chemicals and things like that. The student dress code and all the details to these policies, number 1 will be on our website by next week. Number 2, they will be introduced and reintroduced to students during the first weeks of school. And number 3, and I explained this to families who came to our freshman orientation, is that it is all memorialized in our student handbook. Students are going to be receiving a printed copy of the handbook during, is it the first week of school, Dr. Scott, or the first couple weeks?
First couple weeks. They should be in shipment now, so hopefully you'll get it next week, if not the week after.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. But more importantly, there will be a Google Doc version of our handbook that is live on our school website that is available to all members of the Central community. And as we were revising many of these policies, I'm very proud to say we had input with members of our parent community. We invited members of our home and school to participate in those conversations, as well as members of our student population from different cultural groups and different student leadership positions. So that said, we are 2 minutes now over our time. I just want to thank everybody for taking an hour out of your morning. Thank you for welcoming me to the school environment. If you have a question that was not answered, you can drop it in the chat. My team and I are saving this chat and making sure that we go through it and answer all of the questions. What you can stay tuned for is that there will be additional opportunities like this one throughout the entire school year to connect virtually. You can expect to receive a calendar in the first couple weeks of school that is going to have dates on a quarterly basis where my team and I will be hosting these virtual sessions. Sometimes they will have a specific focus or they will be tailored for a specific grade level, and other times they will just be open to the entire school community. We want to continue to be in true dialogue with you and responsive to the needs that present themselves during the school year. So thank you all for taking the time. I look forward to meeting you if I haven't done so already. And if you have a specific question, feel free to hang back. I'm going to stop the recording, but we'll hang around for a couple more minutes. Have a wonderful Friday, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.